Today is Wednesday, January 15th. We'll bring you the latest on the Southern California wildfire risk and tell you how the Los Angeles community is stepping up to help their neighbors. Also, how President Biden is reshaping the U.S. relationship with Cuba just days before leaving office. Plus, we're talking about what inspectors found at Boar's Head plants, not just the one that shut down, a health update from Princess Kate, and a new Chinese-owned app that's topping the charts here in the U.S. just before a possible TikTok ban. Those stories and even more news coming up. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. Two massive wildfires that have demolished parts of the Los Angeles area are still burning. But the good news is they haven't gotten worse. Some 8,500 firefighters from at least 7 states and 2 foreign countries were able to keep the fires from growing yesterday, even in the face of high winds and low humidity. Firefighters are going to keep at it 24 hours a day, too, since those same weather conditions are expected to stick around for another day from the Mexican border to Central California. Meanwhile, more people who live in the disaster zone are getting their first looks at the destruction. A few thousand more evacuees were allowed back home yesterday, well, if they still had homes to return to. Entire neighborhoods have burned, including thousands of homes. And about 88,000 people are still under evacuation orders. Community organizers and waves of volunteers have been creating refuges around the area to help survivors cope with the devastation. People have been organizing drives, and enough donations have come in to fill warehouses. Volunteers have also started delivering fresh meals and snacks to first responders and evacuees with the help of local restaurants. Others have shown up to help animal shelters and rescue organizations that have been taking in pets whose owners have fled. And that's just to name a small fraction of the work that's being put in to help people dealing with loss. President Biden is set to give his farewell address to the nation. NBC News cites sources who say the president will look back on his legacy and also speak to America's future. He'll speak from the Oval Office tonight at 8 o'clock Eastern. Meanwhile, the next Trump administration is getting ready to take over. But as you know, several of the top picks have to get Senate approval first. Trump's controversial nominee for defense secretary got through his first hurdle with a tense confirmation hearing yesterday. Pete Hegseth promised to focus the Defense Department on the strength of the U.S. military, not on equity. And he was critical of policies aimed at racial and gender diversity. Democrats brought up allegations of heavy drinking, sexual assault, and other misconduct. But Hegseth dismissed the reports as anonymous smears, and he said he's failed at many things but has been redeemed by his religion. Dems also asked about his preparedness to lead the Pentagon, since he doesn't have the traditional qualifications. But many times during the hearing, Republicans leapt to his defense. For example, one GOP senator called Hegseth's lack of experience a breath of fresh air. And afterward, no Republicans came out against him. So a few Trump allies have already come out to say they're confident Hegseth will be confirmed. Today, confirmation hearings are scheduled for more of Trump's top picks, including Secretary of State nominee Marco Rubio, Attorney General nominee Pam Bondi, and 4 others. The U.S. is taking Cuba off its terrorism blacklist for now. President Biden made the move, even though President-elect Trump added Cuba to the list just 4 years ago. And Trump can reverse Biden's reversal as soon as he takes office next week. Still, Biden made the case that his action helps Cuba transition into democracy. The Biden administration is also lifting a separate Trump order that restricted business deals with some Cuban entities. And with that, Cuba's president said his country will release 553 political prisoners. Most of them were put in jail after unprecedented island-wide protests back in 2021, and many faced prison sentences of up to 30 years. Some say that protester crackdown is just one example of how Cuba treats its people. And critics of Biden's move argue the Cuban regime still has a shoddy record on human rights. So it's not clear how long Biden's move will last. 3 other countries are still designated as state sponsors of terrorism: Iran, North Korea, and Syria. South Korea's president is in police custody this morning, being held for questioning. It's just the latest chapter in a political saga that's gone on for over a month now in one of Asia's strongest democracies, ever since President Yoon Suk-yeol declared martial law last month. He's now accused of leading an insurrection. And yesterday, he became the first sitting South Korean president to be arrested. But it wasn't easy, since Yoon has been holed up for weeks at his presidential compound, surrounded by a security team. It took a massive law enforcement operation to bring him in, including more than 3,000 police officers. And there was an hours-long standoff before investigators and officers actually got to the president. Crowds of supporters and opponents were gathered outside despite sub-zero conditions. Then after his arrest, Yoon released a pre-recorded video message in which he said he only agreed to be detained to avoid bloodshed. He claims the anti-corruption agency doesn't have the authority to investigate his actions. Still, he could be held in custody for weeks if a court allows it. Yoon's presidential powers had already been suspended, and a constitutional court still needs to decide whether he can return to office or not. So stay tuned. Well, this week, Britain's Princess Kate made an emotional return to the hospital where she was treated for cancer, and she shared some news. She's officially in remission. In a message posted on social media, Kate said she was relieved, but still focused on recovery. She also thanked the hospital where she received care and went back as a visitor instead of a patient yesterday to meet with people going through treatment. It was the most significant solo royal engagement since her treatment ended. Princess Kate says now she's looking forward to a fulfilling year ahead. All right, we have more news for you still coming up, but first, thanks to our sponsor, Delete Me. Ever wonder how much of your personal data is out there on the internet for anyone to see? It's probably more than you think. Your name, contact info, social security number, home address, even information about your family members are all being compiled by data brokers and sold online. And this can lead to things like identity theft, spam calls, and more. That's why I'm so impressed by Delete Me. It's a subscription service I now use to get information about me on hundreds of data broker websites removed and deleted. They sent me a personalized privacy report detailing what info they found, where they found it, and what they were able to remove. And then Delete Me continues to work for you, constantly monitoring and removing the personal information you don't want on the internet. To put it simply, Delete Me does all the hard work of wiping your and your family's personal information from data broker websites. So take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now at a special discount for our listeners. Today, get 20% off your Delete Me plan by texting Newsworthy to 64,000. Text Newsworthy to 64,000. That's Newsworthy to 64000. Message and data rates may apply, so see terms for details. Now back to the news. There could be changes coming to how obesity is defined, diagnosed, and treated. New guidance from a team of worldwide health experts proposes going beyond the usual body mass index measure. You may know it as BMI, a simple calculation of height and weight. Doctors say that in itself is not a good gauge of whether someone is healthy or not, since people with excess fat don't always have a high BMI, and people with high muscle mass might have a high BMI despite normal levels of fat. So the new recommendations say healthcare professionals should be looking at other measurements too, like waist circumference, plus evidence of health problems tied to extra pounds. The report is significant since it says once people are diagnosed with clinical obesity, they would be eligible for treatment, including obesity medications. And the new definitions have been endorsed by more than 75 medical organizations around the world. Though at this point, it's not clear how widely or quickly they could be put into practice. And some experts actually are not on board. They say the new classification system could be confusing, especially since it requires a comprehensive health assessment and lab tests. Obesity is thought to impact more than 1 billion people worldwide. Here in the U.S., the CDC says about 40% of adults are obese. Inspectors found mold, slime, and insects at multiple Boar's Head facilities, not just the ones involved in last year's deadly listeria outbreak. This week, the USDA released inspection reports detailing unsanitary conditions at plants in Indiana, Arkansas, and Virginia. And some of those conditions are pretty gross, like unidentified slime and a puddle of blood, debris, and trash. Remember, the outbreak linked to Boar's Head deli meats killed at least 10 people. And because of it, a plant in Virginia shut down and liverwurst was discontinued for good. Boar's Head admitted the violations listed in the reports do not meet its high standards. The Justice Department is now investigating whether criminal charges should be filed. President Biden has taken action to advance artificial intelligence in the U.S. He issued an executive order yesterday. The order tells the Defense and Energy departments to lease out federal sites to companies who need them for their data centers, as well as to build new clean energy facilities. AI takes a massive amount of energy and processing power to work. So as AI explodes in popularity and capabilities, more infrastructure is needed too. In fact, the Energy Department estimates the amount of energy data centers need will triple by the year 2028. Biden said the order was designed to keep America in the lead when it comes to the global AI race. And he said requirements for clean energy will help the country transition away from fossil fuels. But some environmental advocates have still raised concerns because the new data and power centers could be exempt from environmental protection laws. Also, the order does not include requirements for water use at data centers, and they typically use lots of it for cooling. The government will take competitive bids to decide which companies get the leases. That process will start by the end of March. American TikTok users are flocking to a different Chinese-owned social media app. It's known as Red Note, though its Mandarin name directly translates to Little Red Book, a famous book of sayings from Chinese Communist Party founder Mao Zedong. And it has quickly become the most downloaded app for both iPhone and Android, ahead of a potential TikTok ban that could kick in this Sunday, depending on a Supreme Court ruling expected any day now. Red Note is not exactly like TikTok since it's not just videos. Users can also post still images and text. But American TikTok users are apparently joining to show their displeasure with the TikTok law. Many TikTok creators who have joined the new app have explicitly said they don't share the government's national security concerns, and some have even shared personal information as a joke. A new hashtag on Red Note, hashtag TikTokRefugee, has been viewed millions of times. Though, because the app is Chinese-owned, it could face a similar ban to TikTok if the High Court upholds the law. And that's it for the main news today. So now it's time for Work Wednesday, when we break down one interesting career or work-related news story every Wednesday. But first, I want to tell you about our sponsor. If you need a new deodorant this new year to be your best-smelling, most confident self, look no further than Lumi Whole Body Deodorant. I am always impressed by this stuff. It's paraben and baking soda free, and all the products I use are aluminum free, although they do have great sweat control options if you prefer. But most importantly, in my experience, Lumi Whole Body Deodorant works to keep me smelling fresh. Lumi is safe to use anywhere on your body and has a bunch of convenient options, from a solid stick to spray deodorant to on-the-go deodorant wipes and more. Plus, you can choose from a variety of scents like clean tangerine, which I love for the body wash, or minted cucumber or toasted coconut, or just unscented. You can try a variety with Lumi's starter pack. It's perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. As a special offer for listeners, new customers get 15% off all Lumi products with our exclusive code. And if you combine that 15% off with the already discounted starter pack, well, that equals over 40% off their starter pack. So use code NEWSWORTHY for 15% off your first purchase at lumideodorant.com. That's code NEWSWORTHY at LUMIDEODORANT.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Lumi. Okay, now back to Work Wednesday. LinkedIn released its annual list of its fastest-growing jobs. And as you might have guessed, artificial intelligence careers are leading the way. The Jobs on the Rise list has artificial intelligence engineer and artificial intelligence consultant as the top 2 job titles growing the fastest. Artificial intelligence researcher also made the top 25. Of course, that reflects the explosion in AI technologies over the past 2 years, but other sectors are seeing growth too. The hospitality industry is picking up as there's still some recovery to do after the pandemic. Travel advisor came in at number 5, and event coordinator was right behind it at 6. There's also a couple of jobs on the list in the construction sector, like community planner and bridge engineer. And when it comes to healthcare, physical therapist is also pretty high on the list. Rounding out the top 10 is a job that's been around in some form or another for hundreds, if not thousands of years: security guard. Well, thank you for listening today and for sharing the show if you find it valuable. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.